Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another video. It's going to be a golf swing analysis for Sudud, submitted to the golf subreddit. His primary concern here was dealing with working on a shallowing movement and specifically about how to not get stuck. So let's go ahead and watch the swing here a second. Definitely a very athletic and fast-looking movement. I would imagine you're already probably have a pretty good amount of power and maybe just sometimes struggle to keep things in play a little bit. So what I want to talk about today is how to shallow in kind of a more correct and controlled manner, okay? So with a shallowing movement, let's take you kind of a little more up to the top. Now, obviously when you shallow, okay, so I think most people understand the basic concept of shallowing is that you kind of want the club head to be working out while your hands are working kind of down, so that the shaft is kind of lays down on a more horizontal position. But I think it's a little more nuanced than that, and specifically thinking about all of the different types of ways that you can accomplish that, right? So getting the shaft to move behind you and the shaft to lay down, or the head to move behind you and the shaft to lay down. And I think when I watch your swing, what I see primarily is that you're using a lot of right shoulder crunch and right lateral side bend. And so you're right, you can really see at this position where the line of your hips is pretty straight, but your shoulders are kind of at this angle. And I think that is kind of indicative of how you have accomplished your shallowing, is mostly by dropping your right shoulder down. And there's specifically a frame in here, right about here, that I want to highlight. So this is about at position 5, and looking specifically at the angle of your right, I guess whatever the bone is between your shoulder and your elbow, how it's kind of along the back of your rear hip. And I think that's probably the area that I would look to improve the most. And the basic concept is that from the top, when you get to this position, I'd want to see that this right elbow has moved this direction towards your belly button, and that it almost feels like your elbows are trying to pinch together, and ultimately get that right elbow working more so that it is kind of getting here in front of the right hip. And the idea is that you want to have your hands, and specifically as governed by your right elbow, driving in front of your body and speeding up to catch your lower body has obviously opened tremendously by the time we reach impact. But your hands also want to be moving out in front of you. So whether that's you feel it by driving the right elbow, kind of the Ben Hogan or the Mo Norman type move, or if you feel by getting the left arm off the chest, if you look and see how your left arm is really pinned across your chest, however you want to feel it, I think that would be very beneficial. And so, just as an example, I pulled up a few swings. Now, this quality isn't so great, but this is Tiger Woods back as an amateur. And I think, he kind of famously would talk about how he would get a little bit more stuck. And I would say as a young player, he had a very, very powerful and active lower body. Now, this footage is a little bit grainy, but you can kind of see a little bit of the right elbow kind of in here. And I think that would be kind of maybe similar to the position I see in your video. And then I want to fast forward. This is from I believe the Memorial or the FedEx Cup Championship. I'm not, sometime late in 2018 when Tiger was actually obviously swinging and playing very well. And I think that this is just an absolutely beautiful transition movement here. And now this is with an iron, so it'll be a little different than your driver swing, but nice open full hip turn. And then watch the right elbow as he drives it. You can see how it's moving in front. Look at this. So I'm going to try to find a similar position. It was kind of right about here. I think this really highlights the difference here, how his right elbow is pretty much almost perpendicular to the ground, whereas yours was just a little bit more kind of on this line. And so from this position, Tiger the club has shallowed, but I think the best part about this is that he is shallowed by keeping his hands and his arms in front of his torso. Look at how, imagine if there was a laser beam shooting right out of his sternum, right? That's pretty close to being right, as if his hands are tracking with his sternum as he opens his chest. And if I go back to your swing, I think we would see that there's just a little bit of a different look there. From here I see that if I try to draw that same line, it just would appear that there is just a little more gap there. Now, again, watching this transition move, I really see how the right shoulder has driven down. I'm watching specifically the action of this right shoulder. If I just draw maybe a mark. Let's try this one. Right, if I kind of target your right shoulder, you can see how it has really moved down, kind of in this direction. If we go over here to Mr. Woods, and we just track the movement of his right shoulder from the top, and he definitely has a little bit of that squat move there, so there's nothing wrong with that. He's flexing there, but I think you'll notice that the position of his shoulders, one thing I really see right off the bat is just how low his left shoulder is. His left shoulder is arguably lower than his right shoulder, whereas when I look over at your image, it would appear that your left shoulder is much higher than your right shoulder. So I think this certainly highlights kind of some of the differences. Now again, we're dealing with a driver swing, so you're going to be inherently more flat versus an iron swing. But I do think the way that you guys get to this position, if you look at Tiger and you consider how much, I really think his arms and his hands are never behind his body. And I think that on your end, that's one thing that you could potentially work on. So, if you could please leave me some feedback, I'd love to know if this is helpful or not, and let me know your thoughts and comments down below in the comments section. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys again soon. Thanks, bye.